Hey, everybody. Before we get started, Tyson here, and I just wanted to say this episode went quite long, so we cut it into two, and today you are going to get part one. Let's go. Welcome, everybody, to the TAC Box podcast. We are in week 3. I am your host, Tyson Wald, and alongside my co host, Dale Martenson, right next to me over here. And in today's episode, we are going to talk about dog shows, and maybe it's your first time wanting to get into dog shows. So we're going to give you some tips and tricks and resources to utilize for showing your dog. How you doing today, Dale?
Oh, I'm good, Tyson. How are you? We're getting ready for the
We
Chin
are.
National,
So
aren't
next
we?
week, well, as you're listening to this, if you are listening to it when it first comes out, today's April 1st. It'll launch on April 2nd. Next week, we have the National Chin specialty in Greensboro, North Carolina. So we're both going to be going to that. That's super exciting. I know you're probably super excited to judge that. When was the last time? Have you judged a chin specialty before? And if you have, when was the last time?
What? I've judged a regional chin specialty in Chicago, but this is the first time I've done a national specialty. We'll just discuss the difference between shows and then national shows because there's different degrees of I mean, like most of the shows we go to are all breed shows, and that's probably mostly what you've already attended, right? If they've all been all breed
Yep.
shows.
Yes, everything I've done has been all breed confirmation so far.
So when you're talking about a show, they'll have group shows where they might be all toy dogs or all sporting dogs, all terriers. Those are just for what breeds in the 7 groups of dogs that they have, and then they'll have like parent club shows, national specialty shows, and those happen once a year in every breed. Which of course we've talked about before about the parent club. They have their part of their function with AKC is to host a national specialty, which is supposed to be like the best of the best. And that is part of, like we've always said, when you've had a dog that you've shown and campaigned it, the Triple Crown was to win the national, to win the breed at Westminster, and to win an all breed best in show. And if you have a dog that can pull off those 3 jewels, you've got quite a dog. But then there'll be like regional shows and specialty shows that are just that breed. And those are great to go to throughout the year if there's one in your area.
Yeah, so that's a fantastic beginning and opens up a lot of doors to somebody who's thinking about showing. A lot of the reason that this podcast was born is because we have your knowledge and tenure in the sport, and then we have a newer person like me that has a lot of questions and has gone through recently in 2024 2025 the struggles and the pains of getting into it, right? One of the things that I struggled with when I first started, and thankfully I had somebody right alongside me, but somebody that doesn't, I was kind of talked into going to dog shows. It wasn't something I was actually seeking out. It was something more that was like, it was part of my contract with the dog that I got, right? Was I had to show it. So it was more of a forced thing. And then once I did it, it was, I was addicted. But somebody that has maybe just bought a puppy or got something, wants to get into their first dog show, what are they seeing? Because there's things out there that's like confirmation, agility, fast cat, things like that. So like, generally speaking, we're going to talk about confirmation when we talk about shows, right?
Right. So since we're both in the confirmation end, but there is a huge aspect of the performance dogs. They have everything. They have obedience. They have rally, like you're talking about, fast cat, dock diving, everything. There's all barn hunt. There is a lot of performance stuff for people who are not looking to show and breed dogs, but they're just like wanting to do things with their dog. That's awesome. But then then of course they have the children's the for the junior showmanship where kids can go ahead, and they even now have peewees where like little kids under juniors age that they can, because they're really trying to make the AKC events be all inclusive for the whole family. It's supposed to be like something that everybody can find something that they enjoy to do and share it in this venue filled with other dog lovers.
Yeah, and there is something for everybody. I mean, my wife doesn't want to step into the show ring at all, but she likes to push the trolley. So she gets to be the trolley and get the dog out and ready to go for the next one because it's my daughter and I that show, and we have multiple different dogs in the chin classes. So it's a lot of times drop one out of the ring, hand it off to the wife, grab the next one to go right back in the ring.
Well, hey, you watch NASCAR. The most important people are the
Right?
pit crew. You know, the driver gets all the glory, but the pit crew
There's
makes it happen. And that person decides whether it's a win and run or you're going down in
Hey,
flames. You know,
there's the shout
gotta
out
have
right
that.
there to all the people that don't step into the ring, but put a lot of work and effort into it behind the scenes.
Thank you. Yeah. No, I mean, and so once what we've talked about this before too, but like, so you start in with your kennel club, like your local kennel club, your regional kennel club, and they'll sometimes offer classes and they'll offer stuff where you can start getting ready to show. And you can go online. They have different superintendents, and there's all sorts of different places where you can go to find shows. I mean, because online is a deep dive. There's lots of it. There's different
So
superintendents, whether it's
talk about
bar
that for
rate.
a minute. Talk about superintendents, because somebody that's never been in a dog show or been to a dog show, that's super confusing. I remember the first time I was like, how do you even find dog shows around the country? And there's like, well, you go to the superintendent. And it's like, well, what
No,
is that? So just can you explain
what's
like
that?
the
So
areas and then the superintendents a little bit?
absolutely. So every show is an event that is sanctioned by the American Kennel Club, but it's hosted by an area group, and they will hire a superintendent. And the superintendent does collects all the dog shows are entered 2 weeks in advance. Closing date is Wednesday. So all dog people Wednesday before noon. Quick, don't call us. We're online. We're entering dogs at the show. So you go in there and you find out the events, and then you look and see who's their superintendent, and that will also be online. You can get a lot of that on akc.org, but the superintendents have websites where they'll have these are all the shows we're doing in that area, and you can go on there and because you have to enter 2 weeks before. Your dog has to be adult registered with the American Kennel Club, so you have to get that paper in before it's eligible to enter at the show. And then you go on and it's as easy as buying something on Wayfair. You enter in your dog, you enter in the class, you might just take a moment to figure out what class you want to go in. If it's a 6 to 9 puppy, a 9 to 12 puppy, count those days. Don't do like me and get in the wrong puppy class and lose your win. They have open classes, which are for all dogs, imported dogs, and all that. And then they'll have the best of breed class, which is for dogs that are confirmed AKC champions. So you pick out your show and you go ahead. Also, the show will have what they call a premium list. And that is your little guide. That's your Lewis and Clark map, how to make this show go really well. Because it's going to have listed the hotels you can stay at that are in close proximity where they're going to let you have dogs. They're going to go ahead, they'll list is there camping available at that show. So if you have an RV or a camper that you want to camp there, you'll need to go ahead and put that in first. That'll close like with the entry fees in advance. A lot of the shows, all shows offer some free grooming space. So when you come in, you can set your crates up and all that. But the free grooming is limited and it goes quickly. And you would need to look further and see when does the building open up, because that you want to see the Dakota land brush, look at the free grooming right when the building opens up. So that's where the people, the coupon clippers, they're going to be like, we're getting the free grooming. So if you don't find yourself to be in that category, which I'm not, look and see if they have prepaid grooming, and you can see how big a spot and for how many days, and you can just for if a little bit of money, you can go ahead and have your spot where they'll have it nailed for you, and so that's one less stress that you have to find is a grooming spot when you get there. You can come if you don't show until noon, you can tootle on in there at 11 o'clock and you have a spot. That can be kind of awesome. But that premium list is everything. It tells about the prizes offered. It talks about every single thing in there, and the classes, whether they do NOHS, the National Owner Handlers competition. All of that is in the premium list, and we used to get those mailed. Pretty much now they're all online. Everything's online. You just you go on there and download that, and then find out your super and work off of that premium list. But that premium list is your treasure
And you can
map.
get the premium list pretty much as soon as AKC approves the show, right? It's not like you have to wait until it's open to register for. I think the premium list usually comes out earlier, doesn't it?
It does. It does. And it'll have the closing date and time, which is a Wednesday by noon of whatever, 2 weeks before the show. And I like I say, especially when you are, if you're gonna choreograph with other people, everybody gets entered, and make sure that so if you're planning your trip, that's kind of important. But and when you go on those online entry sites, you can, if you're a planner, you can pick the shows you want to enter. Like, where you and I live, we don't have like tons of it. We have the show or the other show, but they're far apart. In some areas, you might have multiple shows within a couple 100 miles, and you could decide, well, I'm going to go this show or that show, and it will tell you about the venue. And you kind of have to read it like, oh, it's in a lovely horse arena. Well, that means you're
Yeah.
showing on dirt.
It's at the fairgrounds. Well, you're probably doing a lot outside.
It's at the fairgrounds. Yeah, you're in your sheep and swine building at the fairgrounds. Don't plan on wearing white, because you're in the barn, and that's that kind of stuff. You use that list in there, and then you can figure out, what you want to do, and you can also even go on a lot of those show sites and stuff. Look what the previous year's entry was. I mean, now that doesn't mean 100% that same bunch of dogs will be there. But if you say, well, I've got Japanese chin. Well, last year we had 10, 12 chin were entered. Well, then, okay, cool. That might be a deciding factor for why you want to enter. Like, I want to go there because there's going to be breed competition in my breed. That can be very helpful.
Yeah. So just finishing or just continuing to talk about superintendents. So I kind of look at them as like I was gonna hire somebody to a party planner, right? I'm gonna hire this person to plan this party. They're gonna run the party and everything. So they're bringing all the equipment in to the venue, setting it all up. They're running everything. Something happens, you're going to them, not to the. I mean, you could go to the local kennel club, but majority of like I need to change something, or maybe my dog earns its championship on Friday, and I want to move it up to to be a special, something like that. But generally speaking, from my experience, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, generally superintendents tend to stick to an area of the country or a market. Is that correct? Because I haven't been to any, like Ana Frio does pretty much everything in the Midwest from what I'm familiar with. They've been the superintendent of every show I've been to. Does that seem to float throughout the country that way, where there's different superintendents in the markets?
Yeah, so that's a good point. That's a good question. All right, so the superintendents, when you're part of that show giving club, you'll go ahead and say, you might send it into you might say, I've got a show. It's approved by AKC. AKC's already done my application. I've got emergency services. I've got the venue. Everything meets specs to have the event. Then we just need to get our superintendent. Superintendent's going to print the ribbons. Superintendent's going to bring all the whatever ring stuff that they're going to offer. They're going to bring wickets and scales and everything, tablecloths. But so they'll send you, but they get a percentage. They have a fee per dog entered at the show. So that you often, and there's probably, a degree of how far they're going to go. Are they available that weekend? Do they have staff and resources? So they do tend to be a little regionalized, Onofreo, which has kind of been our gold standard in the Midwest for a long time. They have been the James brothers run that, great dog show family. Their mother was a famous judge, Helen Lee James. They are very popular down here. A lot of the clubs use them, but there's lots of good superintendents, and a lot of them are localized. You can find some of it on infodog.com. You'll see the different shows coming up, and you do want to make sure to check your master list, because if there's a show in your area and you only check one superintendent, maybe that superintendent's not doing that show this year because maybe they couldn't take it. Maybe the club decided that somebody else would do it cheaper. All of that it figures out. So go off of AKC, go off the master list of shows, and kind of figure out to make sure that don't count on just the superintendent's list of all the shows that are going to be in your area, because there might be something that, that's missed. And every now and then, I mean, just like any other business deal, sometimes people move their business from one superintendent to another. It's nature of the beast, just kind of depends. But there's the superintending job hard, you know, and they, that's it's a lot, because how well the show goes, that falls on the superintendents. The club's going to get the stuff going. Sometimes the clubs do their own ring stewarding. Sometimes they hire ring stewards. But, you as an exhibitor, that's your first contact is your superintendent. And then you're going to get your entry confirmation, where they're going to tell you, hey, this is your entry back. This should come the week before the show. You enter 2 weeks before, and then 1 week before you should get your entry confirmation. And they're going to say, well, there's this many Japanese chin entered. And you'll say, well, I only needed a major win. Well, there's only 2 other ones entered, that type thing. So there's no prospect of there being a major. So you may or may not want to come, or may not want to bring that dog. A lot of times, depending as to the breed, if it's not a super common breed and you don't know other people going, if you enter 2 of a sex and in a breed, you can bring a point. And that's like for many years, the Japanese chin, there would not be any other. We would have the only one. So it's like before we'd enter a show, we'd always enter 2, because at least we'd have a point, because it's kind of stinks to go real far and not to have a point.
Yeah, when you think about these superintendents, like they're traveling every weekend. It's just like they pack up, travel, pack up, travel. It's crazy to think about. Now, you had mentioned the master list, and that was something that took me forever to figure out. Like I just kept thinking, like, I wish there was a spot where I could just go see all the dog shows, because I was first told, like, go to Onofreo and you register for the show. So in my mind, as a new person, it was, well, Onofreo is where you register for all the shows, but they didn't have them all. So I know I discovered Infodog, which seems like a master list to me, and will tell you who the superintendent is, and you can go to that superintendent's website. But then I did notice AKC has one as well, and I think it only might go 6 months into the future. But are those the 2 that you would be talking about, or do you know of more?
Yes, there are, and I think there's one done through the Canine Chronicle too, like Find a Show or something like that. But yeah, I mean, like when you get into the habit of like the where you're gonna, like, I'm gonna enter these shows because it's like this is my time off, this is where I want to go, that kind of thing. I like going there. Then you kind of get a little lazy, and because you already know where you're gonna go, but there's a, like I said, a fair amount of research, and the more you do planning in going to the show, the better time you're going to have. And I tell people, hey, check it out a little before. If you're like, so like this last weekend, we went and we were judging, we didn't show, but went up to this really cool little town called Claremore up on the Kansas-Oklahoma border. And this is like a really neat little historic town. And we had a couple of breaks. We went like did a little sightseeing, checked it out, found out some of the historic stuff, ate at a different restaurant. I mean, there's like there's a lot to do. You don't just have to go just into the arena and sit and watch the dogs. You can do other things too, you know what I mean? And that can be fun. You can, force yourself into a little bit of cultural growth and broadening your horizons. And I'm being a runner, I like to go check out whatever trails they have and that kind of stuff. And that stuff can be very cool.
Yeah, and it's an opportunity to do more than just a dog show, but even at that, there's a lot of cool things. So, okay, so we decided we want to show our dog. We figured out we got to find out what superintendent it is. We went on to akc.com. We found a show that was somewhat local. Figured out the superintendent. We go to their website. It's clunky. It looks old because most of them do. There's a huge need for updating and getting into 2025 with a lot of this. But that aside, so you decide you're going to register for the show. You go through the process, and you're trying to figure out how many dogs are there. You got it. You got your confirmation. Then 2 days before the show, the program comes up and says, the times, and talk about that packet, because that's a big old packet that tells you what ring and what time. And those are probably a lot of questions people have, but you really don't get that information until like 2 days before the show, or maybe a week before the show. What do you generally see with that, and what's the benefit for people into having that? Should they print it? Should they just have it local? Do they buy one when they get to the show? What is your best advice there?
Right. Those great questions. So used to be we would get to the show and buy the catalog so we could see what was entered. Of course, nowadays, why would you want to buy it? You can open it up on your tablet and read it, and you don't have to haul it around with you. But you should have your judging schedule. As per AKC rules, it's going to have your ring, and it's going to have your time, and it's going to have the breed scheduled in that ring before your dog. So it is incumbent to you as the exhibitor to make sure that you are at your ring, you have your number picked up, and you are ready to roll to when the judge when they call your class. You better be there. And that's, I think, the big one thing that people can sometimes be a little bit, like, what? Because there can be a little bit of a hurry up and wait aspect. And it'll be broken out in increments. They're going to say they'll judge maybe 2 hours. They'll say 8 to 10 set. And then you'll find your breed. They cannot start your breed before the published time. So if they say Japanese Chin is right after 25 Chihuahuas, this and this, 3 Papillons, 5 Cavaliers, and then your Chin. Okay, those all have to be judged before you are in there. And you can roughly figure that it's going to take about 2 minutes per dog before you go in. That's about what they're going to figure, 2.5 minutes a dog. So but here's the tricky part. You have no way of knowing if they're going to be absent. So you might say, hey, there's 30 Chihuahuas before us. That's an hour's worth of judging. I don't have to be ringside until 9 o'clock. I don't have to be there till 10. Well, if those Chihuahuas don't show up, if they, all of a sudden they can call your class. And it kind of sucks bad if you're not ready. Nobody likes to struggle. So, get to the show, find your ring, and then find figure out your set. Usually once that's set, where it is in there, you should go pick up your armbands. I would say you should pick up your armbands 30 minutes before your set starts. Because in case there's a problem with your entry and there's a card there that says, Tyson, come see us at the superintendent's table. And you go, oh my God, I'm next in. That's a very much a panic mode. It's like, I've just drove 8 hours to get here. And there's that, so make sure you have your entry. Make sure you pick up your armband 30 minutes before your set starts. And that way you can kind of have you put your little plan in place. And then you should keep an eye. You should watch that ring once that ring starts judging. And you can and if you do have a catalog, you can kind of go, oh, that's a class. There should be 6 Chihuahuas in it. Oh, only two came. Oh, instead of, that's going to go a lot quicker. You know, that's going to go a lot faster. So be ready, be prepared, and then know what your plan is before you go. When keep that judging schedule with you, is then it's going to say, like, if you're doing owner handler, they're going to say, well, the owner handler group is going to be immediately following the group that the group in the regular status. So if toy group is the first group in, we're starting groups at 2:15. That means that probably all likelihood, it's going to take, maybe it'll take half hour for that toy group. So 2:45, the owner handler group could be going in there. You want to be kind of watching that, because that gives your dog a huge advantage, gives you a mentally huge advantage to be kind of planning that out in advance, knowing your strategy.
So be early. I mean, like you said, they'll never start before the time, but it's really easy to look at the catalog and say, well, I show at 8:30 a.m. Cool, but I'm the fourth breed down, so it's going to be later. But then when you actually look at the breeds, it's like there's only 2 dogs per breed. Well, that could only be 10 minutes, and so you could be showing 10 minutes after the start time, or even sooner. So it's like always be early, and really, like, you can pick up your numbers whenever, as long as the ring steward for that judge and that block is there. You can really get it whenever. I always tell my daughter, like, we're always way early, so I always tell her, is like, well, you don't have to get your number right away. You want to get it early, but if everybody's lining up because Chihuahuas are going in, they're all trying to get their Chihuahua, their numbers for their Chihuahuas that they're going to show in 20 minutes, and we have an hour till we show. Like, be respectful of others around
Let
you.
them
Let them get them. And
Absolutely. And one thing that I think is kind of handy to do, and I never regret doing this. Sometimes I get cocky and think, oh, I don't need to do that, is write the dog's name and class on the back of the armband. Because if you are thinking that you're like having you're like, oh, okay, we entered 5 of them. I got all these armbands on, and is that 6 or 9, blah blah blah. Like, some of the superintendents, the numbers for the males are odd numbers and the girls are even, but not all. you know so it's a really big, it will not impress the judge if you go in with the wrong number, especially if nobody catches it. Somebody's going to get in trouble, and you're going to be the problem. Kind of figure, all right, I got the 6 to 9 is first, then I'm going to come out, and when you have people helping you, and like that would be your wife, the pit crew, um, that number stays with the dog. So you come out of that class, take off that armband, hand that dog, or put that dog back in the trolley, and then but set his number, so we're going to take Ralph back in because he won puppy class for winners. So those kind of things, having that little bit of extra planning in advance, hugely beneficial. It's going to make it go a lot better if you kind of know where it's going. And like, if you're going to have other people helping you, you're coming out of the class, go, oh, you're going to bring in Ralphie? I'm going to put your armband on you. Here he is. And if anything changes, that number goes with the dog. It's important, and it's a big problem if it gets in the ring and it doesn't get
it's
caught.
it it's yeah, don't try to be prideful and remember your number, especially if you're handling more than one dog. I've done it. I've mixed up a 6 and a 9 before. Thankfully, it was at a fun match and not an actual AKC show. It was just at a fun match by the local kennel club when I did it. So thankfully, I learned my lesson there, and now I do write names on the back of them so I know. And then make sure they're right side up. 6-9. I mean, judge is going to peek over, I would assume, and see a 9, but it's an upside down 6. You could have that issue, but um, I want to talk a little bit about, well, a couple things, but mainly classes. So again, I think people who have been dog showing for 5, 10, 15, 20, 50 years, however long it's been, it's not nearly as confusing as somebody that's maybe been in it 2 years or less. And so when you go to your superintendent's website and you're registering your dog, there's like a list of 15 different things that you have to pick. And it's pretty easy when your puppy's 6 months old or 9 months old or even 12 months old, because you just find the 6 to 9 month class and you hit, I want to do that one. You check the bubble there. But there's also different things that you can check, like National Owner Handler Series. There's American Bred. There's Open, like 15 different ones. Can you talk through some of those real quick and what does somebody want
Absolutely.
to be looking for? And, like my dogs were all born in America. So why wouldn't I do American Bred when I'm registering for a show? I don't, but why wouldn't I? Why am I not doing that?
All right, so we'll start at the bottom classes and we'll work our way up. So since they don't really do fun matches very often, more, I mean, now they offer 4 to 6 month class at the shows. So if you have puppies that you're wanting to train, you can enter them in 4 to 6, and you're going to have a licensed judge, and you're going to have the full ring experience, and they'll do all of the, they call it the 4 to 6 puppy group, and they'll be over there, and they'll do the breeds, and they do breed and opposite. They don't 1 2 3 4, they do breed and opposite. The breed winners for each puppy breed get to go in and compete for puppy group for that, and then they'll pick the best overall, which is best puppy in show. And it's kind of a lot of fun. It's a and you get to, like, if your breed is a table breed or if it's a ramp breed, you're going to have an AKC judge doing this, and it's going to be a good training experience for you.
But it's
So
just
4 to
that
6.
there is no points involved.
No,
This is not like something super
no.
official. It's fun.
Yep. This is what you're doing when you want to get that puppy that you've been taking to Pet Home Depot and walking around, and you want to get it on. You want, like, which I do, is I take him to Home Depot and I walk him around and I put him on lawn furniture. Hey, will you pet my dog? But if you want the full experience, you can go do the 4 to 6, and it's a good chance to get the puppies in and see how they're going to react in the ring. So, but there's no points for that. But and it's so that's a good option for people wanting to get their
There
young
is,
puppy out.
however, and this is a good option also, not only for young puppies, but for new people in general. If you got somebody that's scared to get into the ring that or children or anything like that, let them show in the beginner puppy. There's no pressure. There's no points involved. But on the same time, if they win breed, they get a ribbon. If they win in group, they get a ribbon. And there is also the puppy of achievement, which points do count for in beginner puppy. If I'm not mistaken, they should count, right? Beginner puppy of achievement. So you can work towards your puppy of achievement, which is 10 points to get that certificate or that award before the puppy is 12 months old. So that's also part of the 4 to
Correct.
6. All right. So on.
Yeah. 4 to 6 is very cool. And like you say, it's a good starting point for people, especially when if you're having anxiety on that, because no one's going to be, there's no stress. There's not anything in there, and it's a low impact type
My
of
very
thing.
first time ever in the ring was 4 to 6, and my puppy pooped, so it's like you just get everything out right away.
Yeah. Perfect. It's like, mental note to self. We're going to make sure you poop before we go to show you, because you can have stage fright. Yeah, there you go. So the puppy classes, after 4 to 6, then everything else counts for championship points. Those are eligible for championship points. You have your 6 to 9 and 9 to 12, that's kind of a self-explanatory thing. But one thing, make sure, because we're entering these out 2 weeks in advance, count up your days. Because, like, I was at the Fort Worth show the other day, and I showed my puppy. One day he was in 6 to 9. On Saturday he was 6 to 9. He moved to 9 to 12 the next day. You do your little math in your head, and then make your mental note, like, oh yeah, because I'm sitting there waiting around, they're calling 6, and I'm like, I'm going in for 6 to 9. I'm like, oh, I'm 9 to 12 today. It's something to kind of keep in mind, but you be mindful. People lose points, or on that kind of thing, if you're in the wrong puppy class. So you've got to be 6 to
And
9 or
it's
9
the
to 12.
age
And then
and the day of the show, correct? Not when
day,
you're registering, day of show.
day of the show. And if it changes over the weekend, bump them up. So the next class is the 12 to 18. 12 to 8. So historically speaking, the open class was usually the biggest competition. That was where the animals that were like really ready to win were in open class. It has gotten now to the point where it's a small class now, usually in open. Uh, because usually most of the dogs, because there's so many shows these days, are championed before they get to the open class. But so if you felt like your dog was not aged out of the 9 to 12 class, but not quite ready for open, or if you had two and you wanted to show them in different classes, like I'm going to put one in 12 to 18, one in open, you could do that. Again, you will lose your points if you are wrong in your calculation. Those are age qualified
What's
classes.
open?
So you
What's
may
the age range for open then?
open. If it's alive and over 6 months of age,
So
it can go in
technically,
the
a
open
6 to 9
class.
month old puppy
You
could register to be an open instead of 6 to 9 months. Why would they do that though?
absolutely.
Like,
Well,
is
I
open
mean,
more
so
for
so
like
the
over 18 months? Technically, is that like what it's there for? But you can enter it whenever you want.
historically historically speaking, they would say that the open class was the mature, ready to win animals. I don't really see if it being that big of a sea of like maturity now, like today. Open class is the last class judged before they do winners. So if you, for my psyche, if I have a dog and it's a pretty experienced dog in the ring, and I want to go in winners, and I'd like to be in the front of the line. I don't want dogs in front of me. I'll go in the open class because I I'm not saying you have an advantage in the open class, but you have your lead dog in that lineup. And so if you have a dog that's really mature, really shows well, you can set the pace. You're gonna take that first place ribbon from open, and you stay in the ring, and you're in for winners. So there is a little bit of a commanding presence on the open animal. So if you have something that you think is pretty strong, put it in open. I like the open class. I enter open class a lot. The one of the other classes is you can even enter a finished champion in the open class. Sometimes people do that, like in rare breeds, if they're trying to make points, and they'll put champions from that they finished year before, and they'll like drop it to open to make points to try to bump it up to like a major win. In case for the kids at home, 15 points to make a championship. Two of those wins have to be a 3, 4, or 5 point win. We call those majors. So you can get 1,000,000 points, but if you don't have your major wins, you don't get a championship. So the number of points is determined by the number of dogs in competition. So sometimes if you have a rare breed or a low entry breed, you'll need to enter something to, bump up the points. Well, you can drop last year's champion in the open class. Now it might win again, and that just happens. But it does make a possibility for there to be points. The next, then going down from there, there's the American bred class. American bred class eligible any age, 6 months up. Just has to be born in the United States, not an
So,
import. Has to
is
be
there
in.
restrictions that come with this? Any sort of points or something? So say, you know, for just say our scenario, for instance, we have two bitches that are the same age that we're showing, and one continually beats the other one. So for the other dog to get an opportunity and practice in the ring, could you enter that one in American bred so they'd be in the ring by themselves? Or is there restrictions? Why wouldn't you do that, or why would you do that? I mean, I feel like I just presented a great case why you would, but what would be the downsides of that?
So, historically speaking, they considered some of those other classes, what we would call a filler class. Like you wouldn't put the most ready dog, your prize, your one that your strongest competitor you'd put in open. Well, you might put something else in American bred as kind of a filler, to kind of pad the points. And but anymore, American bred is used a lot. And especially if you have a dog that maybe does a little bit better following others. And sometimes people like to not be the first one in line. Sometimes like, oh, I'd rather be the second one in, not the first one in, have a rabbit in front of you, and that, so I mean, American bred is a great class for that. It's usually, if you have an entry in American bred, statistically speaking, you're going to win that class, probably the only one there. It'll get you into that winner's class. You can't win the points if you're not in the winner's class. So if you have two, and this one always beats that one, stick one in American bred and get her in that class, because then the judge might think, oh, I'm kind of liking that one. It's kind of growing on me, and maybe it's just one of those ones that takes a little while to warm up. So you can stick them in that class. The other class that's kind of handy is the bred by exhibitor class. That's my favorite class. I love the bred by exhibitor class because I feel like that's kind of a badge of honor class if you've bred it, and I mean, it should be something you're really proud of in my eyes, but it's technically open to any dog that you're the breeder of. You have to be the breeder, you have to be the owner, and you have to be the handler. All three. You can't. So if and at one time they allowed family members. Now it's like your name has to be listed: breeder, owner, handler. You have to do all three. And so, but if you're going to do that, they're like, so if you're thinking, I might not go to the show with you, and so you might need to show it, don't put it in bred by, put it in open or put it in the puppy classes, and anybody can show it. But if you know you're going and you want to show, if you obtain the whole championship from the bred by exhibitor class, the American Kennel Club will send you an additional medallion for showing in the bred by exhibitor class.
And that'll wrap us up for today's episode. If you want to hear the rest of this podcast, make sure you're subscribed and you tune in next week as we finish this episode of the podcast. More good things to come. Thanks for listening. We will talk to you soon. Bye.